Well, I had this joke emailed to me this week. So I just had to pass it along this morning. Of course, I like to start with something funny. But a woman went to the doctor's office one day where she was seen by one of the younger doctors who didn't know her. After about 4 minutes in the examination room, she burst out screaming and she ran down the hall. An older doctor stopped her and asked what the problem was, and she told him her story. After listening, he had her sit down and relax in another room, and the older doctor marched down the hallway back to where the young doctor was, and he was writing on his clipboard, and the older doctor went up to him and says, "Okay, what are you doing?" Mrs. Terry is 61 years old, has 4 grown children and 7 grandchildren, and you told her she was pregnant? And the young doctor looked just not even batting an eye and said, "Well, if she still had the hiccups." Come on now. Pray for me while I pray for us this morning. Father God, let the words of my mouth, the meditation of all our hearts, Lord, be pleasing unto you this morning. Amen. Well, today we're going to continue in the last 24 hours of Jesus' life, where we're now to the point in which the trial's over. Jesus was beaten and flogged. Now, I really don't want to cast a real bad picture on this, but it's not a pretty picture. We have some artwork or some people who just say, "I just don't want to hear about the beating and the flogging Jesus took." They just don't want to hear it. But we have to hear it because we have to have the realization and see with our own eyes or in our own minds the pain and the anguish that Jesus went through. We really need to know that in order for it to sink into us what He really gave up for us. The movie Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's movie a few years back, and it was pretty gruesome. Most of us have seen that, but it was pretty gruesome, and some people just did not want to see that. They want to cast their vision of Jesus in this wonderful light, but still, we can still do that. But we still have got to realize what we, as people, did to our Savior, and what the Jewish people back then did to Jesus. We really need to see it. It's the way Romans did things too. They flogged him. They would beat him and cause major pain. Skin would rupture, and it just was a very horrific scene, if you can think of that. And picture that in your mind as we get ready to go through Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday. That with all the great things that happen with Easter, the resurrection, we cannot and should not ever forget the pain He suffered for us. We cannot forget that. Let's go back to the scripture that Mark read earlier from Mark 15, 16 through 21. He said, "The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace and called together the whole company of soldiers. They put a purple robe on Him. Then He twisted together a crown of thorns, set it on Him. And they began to call out to Him, 'Hail, King of the Jews!' Again and again they struck Him over the head with a staff and spit on Him. And falling on their knees, they had paid homage to Him, mocking Him the whole time. They took off the purple robe and put His own clothes back on Him. Then they led Him out to crucify Him. But a certain man, from Cyrene, Simon, the follower of Alexander Rufus, was passing by on his way from the country. And they forced him to carry the cross." So now we have Simon coming in from the country, really not realizing all that's going on at this point, and sees Jesus coming down the road, having to carry part of the cross with Him as He went to His death. And there's some versions that say He just picked up the cross and helped Him, and some, and like Mark says, He was forced by the Roman soldiers to carry the cross. It's interesting to realize the cross that Jesus had to carry. And then we have Simon of Cyrene, who went in and carried the cross. There's an interview about his book, Folly of the Prayer. Pastor Matt Woodley shared a story about his friend Teresa. Teresa was experiencing what St. John of the Cross calls a dark night of the soul. a period of spiritual loneliness and despair. Over the course of describing her story, listen to how Woodley discovered what seemed to be a most helpless in his ministry. And when he found out, it was actually the most helpful. After marrying the man of her dreams, Teresa had dropped into the abyss of a deep depression. Everything went dark in her mind and her body. She even started writing her obituary. And 3 years ago, he says, I would have had plenty of answers and solutions for her, but I would have been so clever and so powerful, but he says, now all I could do was sit with her in her pain. We prayed. I didn't know really what to do for her. Didn't have any answers, so I said, Teresa, I have no idea what to say, so can we just read the Psalms? He read Psalm 77, an agonizing psalm of lament. And he said he went on home. He left feeling utterly powerless. And I sure didn't think that he made her feel much better. The next week, another leader of our church visited Teresa. She was still suffering intensely. But when the leader asked if he could pray for her, Teresa said, yes, but before you pray, could you read Psalm 77 for me? I've been clinging to that all week. It's my lifeline to God. Apparently, he says, when we read Psalm 77, in utter powerlessness, God showed up in her life with power. God showed up when we didn't think He would. Woodley goes on to add, he says, at times the best, most powerful, most useful way to love someone is to get to the end of myself. I admit that I can't fix or change you. My words and my advice won't heal your brokenness, but I can be with you, and we can go together to the Father. You see, Jesus in His pain received help from a passerby, Simon the Cyrene. And He carried the cross for him. Our story this morning that I just read talks about someone carrying the cross for somebody else's pain. You got to realize too also that carrying the cross can come in many different forms for people. It's a matter of having the heart to want to do something for somebody else. And have a heart of service to others. Be able to share their pains, their anguish. It's just not up to the ministers to do that. It's up to all of us. We all carry our own burdens. We all carry our own pain. We carry our own hurts with us. Many times we keep them to ourselves. But it's something that we shouldn't have to carry our own cross. There are people who want to help carry our cross for us. And we can't let other people help us with our burdens and our pains and our anguish if we don't let them know what they are. We just like to keep it to ourselves, thinking, I can handle it myself. I can handle it myself. When I can't. I can't handle it myself. And I need somebody to carry my cross. And there are people out in this world who don't think they have anybody who can carry their cross for them. But we're all called to carry the cross.